Alright, I don't know if you cool cats have heard about this fancy new thing called the ego death yet, but it's a pretty important concept in someone's philosophies. I'll tell that to you guys later. But what it essentially means, to oversimplify it for you cool cats out there, is we have a field of perception, what we know inside the things that we see, our basic senses. And there is the ideas of real stuff going on. So if we see like a dolphin, I'll get to those things later, and we think that it's a certain color, like it's light blue or something, when really reality is it's probably a lot of colors. But our basic senses see it as probably something that's light blue. Now, did a couple things right here where what the ego death basically is, where there our perception is that's backwards, but I don't really care. So cool, aren't I? Anyways, our perception lies inside here. It's quite small compared to the amount of things that exist. And the reality, I don't care, Dylan, lies right outside of that. The ego death is, of course, the breaking of the barrier between our perception, the way things that we see them are, and the real reality of things really are. Now, I've heard about this being talked about in some weird mystic communities, and I might just be oversimplifying the concept, honestly. However, it seems a bit arbitrary that we could ever achieve, if you would even call that, some sort of ego death, because, well, for us to comprehend the nature of reality as it truly is pretty much incomprehensible. And for another thing, futile, but I'll get to that later. Something that I found pretty curious when I was drawing this diagram is that I don't have any reason for believing this, but I do believe that there... Oh, shoot, don't do that. That there must be something that lies outside of the possible perception of reality that we can't have if we did ever attain the ego death. Now, bear with me here, if you will. See, the possible reality for us to be able to comprehend, or even to just see, even if we do break down our own personal perceptions, that has to be limited by the thing which allows it to exist. Now, you could argue that whatever force is out there, whatever God or science man who allows all these things to exist, or at least created them, may not have the exact power to allow or disallow them to exist. So my whole theory that thing, whatever force allows this stuff to exist, has a reality which is incomprehensible even to someone who achieves an ego death. Again, bear with me here, I'm getting a bit confusing. You could break down that theory and you could just totally disregard it if you can argue and prove to me that, I swear, if somebody comes in my room now, I'll die. I'm so cool like that, by the way, in case you weren't aware. Anyways, you could disprove everything that I just said about there being a reality that is not exactly a reality, just a field of things that we can understand, or a field of things that are understood by something that could never be achieved by us because of whatever force there is which allows us to exist. And you could break that down by saying the force which allows us to exist could not be a single entity. It has to have been, I'm just saying this hypothetically. I don't really believe in this. I'm like a Christian, so, but hypothetically, if I were the man that I'm pretending to be right now, who is not a Christian, but the person who believes in, the multiple things existing to have created the universe, or not really the universe, but created our field of understanding, they wouldn't necessarily have to have a field of understanding, on their own, not as a group of who they are, but on their own as individuals, whoever they are, which wouldn't necessarily be unattainable to us. It would just be in an environment that is okay. I'm going to try to break it down. So, again, this is reality. And I am going to draw the thing that I don't believe in, but it's sort of hypothetical, which could disprove my argument. So reality would have to come from, hypothetically, and whatever argument this is, again, I don't believe in this, I'm just saying it's a hypothetical, tiny gods. So, as an effort, they would create this field of understanding which we can comprehend. However, because they are a group who created this field of understanding, that also means that their individual understanding, so one tiny God, would not mean, so one tiny God right there does not necessarily mean that they are greater than us. Now, I'm talking to a stupid person because I'm trying to break this down myself. Now, back to my beliefs. I'm just going to do this little thing where it's like, because I don't believe in any of that, honestly. Why don't I believe in that? I'll have to think about that another time, but it's pretty standard, really. I feel like if there were a group of beings, and I'll get back to the ego death later, I promise, but if there were a group of beings that would have existed, to have created all of this stuff, well, first of all, I think that's outside of my comprehension. So I'm just going to use the comprehension card to forfeit out of this. Now, I could go off on a whole tangent about why I believe in the traditional monotheistic God and why I believe in, Christ himself, because I do. It's pretty cool. But back to the ego death. All right, so assuming that I am right, because I'm just cool like that, and that outside of the reality which will be comprehended if we broke our own perception, the way that we understand things, and we're able to see the way that everything is, without our traditional, barriers and biases and racist and sexist and just, I see this color, this pigment. If we broke down all those barriers and we saw everything exactly as it was, hypothetically, not hypothetically, I don't, toss that out. I'm a piece of, okay, I'm not cool for saying hypothetically. I won't say that. However, there could be, outside of this reality, because of someone who created our understanding of the reality that we are capable of understanding. There's a cat outside. Sounds like my cat. I have to make a video about those cats too. Anyways, outside of our understanding, that thing who created whatever there is out there, I'm just going to cut to chase. Okay, so basically, this stuff is hard for me to understand, and it's hard for me to talk about. First of all, because I might just be simplifying the ego death. I just, read this stuff and I thought about it, and I was like, hey, I could talk about that. So I did. However, you gotta think about here. Who cares And if they do, why would they care? Now, actually, despite the tangents that I've made, I honestly don't think that this is a thing that a person should care about so much. And this is something that I'm going into. Why should the ego death be looked as something as an achievement? Why should obtaining an understanding of the way that things really are, the unbiased, factual, cold nature of the way that things really are, why should that be seen as a higher level of intelligence, especially when you are gaining your own version of knowledge, and in many cases, your own knowledge, but having your own individual understanding of this. Now, of course, there are cases when a person is simply wrong, but I think that is when they misinterpret their. Oh shoot, that's my leg. I can't show that. But I think it's when someone their misinterprets the way that they see things as the way things really are. Like if I were to stumble upon a racist one day and they told me that their like genetics theory about skull shape, whatever garbage for racists make up these days, if they told me that that was absolutely cold stone factual, and then I looked at their evidence, and then they proved themselves wrong because their evidence would go totally out of line of anything that really is factual, then there you go. They are wrong because they understand the things that they see, the way that they understand things as the way that things really are. That is the thing which makes them incorrect. That is the thing which keeps them from what anyone would call, I guess. I mean, anyone as like a general term. I'm saying everyone who ever watches this would agree with me. Anyways, all that garbage out. So, I'm just gonna circle back to the racist real quick. All right, so he is wrong. Therefore, he does not know things. Therefore, he has certainly not obtained any higher level of intelligence, as we will call it. So, what would do that? Because I certainly don't think the ego death would, considering the fact that this racist over here, he tried to say that the way that he saw the world was the way that the world really is. That is him trying, at least calling his opinions reality, and therefore the ego death. It's just wrong. So, would the way that we see things, the way that things necessarily don't have to be, or they might not be, what intelligence, as we would call it, would that actually entail if we have every possibility of being incorrect? Well, how would a person go about saying that someone is intelligent? I'm not even going to throw that out. Things that are correct, more knowledge is intelligence. Why is that a good thing? That's what I'm saying. Okay, so the real thing about this that my brain just latched onto because I'm something, I don't know, is that latching on and seeing the way that the way that we see things as something that is valuable and has merit to it. Seeing that as something like the thing that I just said, it can lead to things that have value, obviously, but outside of basic intelligence. Which is why I don't really think that the ego death is some sort of ascension. It's because there are things that are valuable to us that don't necessarily have to be completely factual. This is where creativity comes in. If you instead look at the source of what advances us or what makes us more human or makes us more of a better people, that's incorrect grammar. Don't say what I just said. Basically, the thing that makes us go up, but not literally, there could be a billion different things inside the way that we really see things that can make us go up, but not literally. Like, what is a thing that goes inside our perception? It's probably like law or something, or like, oh no, how do you draw an M? Law, or like, I'm just gonna do it like this. Law, or like books, or like magic, or like anything that is not absolutely objective goes inside the way that we really see things. Our entire standard of morality could be wrong. The stuff that I'm talking about right now, it is inherently unobjective. So it goes inside the little perception bubble that I made right there. So you could argue that latching on to things that are not objective gives us more value, more merit than anything that is actually objective ever would. Because the thing is, people don't latch on to things that are objective because there are so many things that are true that we don't even know all of them. We don't even know where to begin because a lot of times, most of the times actually, finding out what actually is true is such a hard thing to do that people stop trying to do that and just make stuff up along the way. That's where racists come in. That's where a lot of bad people come in. But there's something else too. We could just stop trying to obtain truth. Why would we do that? For fun, of course. That's all I have to say about that. I'm kind of burnt out now. Don't don't look at anything I just said as my personal opinions on this. My personal opinions on this is that I think that there's a lot of stuff that we could do that doesn't have to do with the objective truth because, we can understand that. So there's a billion other things that we could do that go inside the perception box that don't have to do with the ego death. So what happens if hypothetically, don't say that. What happens if I just ego died? What happens if I did experience the ego death? Well, good for me then. But there are never ever going to be any objectives to things like creativity or law or morality. If I did ego die, I wouldn't necessarily improve anything, even about my own situation. There are a lot of things that are completely up to my own personal opinion, to my own values and my own experience that can never be proven or solved by any ego death. Maybe one could argue, again, this is not my opinion, but one could argue that the main reason why people do things is not to obtain truth. People have never been on a search for that, but rather have been on a search that by making more objective studies and by asking more questions without any objective answers, have been in an effort to not understand the world more as it is, but understand the world more as what a human being would. Essentially, make the world more human. But I don't like doing that because it's stupid and sappy. But you could say that. So, really, try to simplify it down for my own sake. What people do, how people advance, as you were saying, how like Greeks made democracy and all that, is they go inside this perception bubble right here, perception thingy, and they just go around in like circles, and they keep asking questions, and they keep like messing with it. They don't even make the perception level bigger. They just keep confusing it, so it kind of wobbles around, but it never breaks. And this thing, people speculate that they sort of wobble around in this thing a bit more, trying to get a bit closer to it. But they're never going to reach it because the tools they use to get closer to their little reality bubble are the same things that, in this allegory, make the wall of the perception bubble stronger. So when they ask more questions and they try to find more truth of nature, they just open more windows for what could be false, could be the way that things aren't. All right, now that's all I have to say about that. I already told you my opinions and all that stuff. Next time we do this, I'm going to talk about whales. Not whales. Next time we do this, I'm going to talk about dolphins. And it's going to be the coolest thing anyone has ever heard. All right.